Hello, Screven County Schools. Welcome to the Flipped Classroom cohort. I'm your Instructional Technology Coach, Marlene Harris. This is our first lesson in our series of lessons, and in this lesson we'll look at a basic introduction of the Flipped Classroom and some best practices that we'll use throughout our sessions. Before moving on to Session 2, make sure that you view this video in its entirety and answer the quiz questions that follows. So let's begin with our introduction of our Flipped Classroom. So what is a flipped classroom? Let's begin with what it is not. It is not a new instructional method, and it is certainly not a replacement for teachers. But what it is a different delivery method. It is student-centered. It provides higher order thinking opportunities for your students. And lecture and the lower order thinking content attainment is independent and self-paced. Practice and extension is individual, small group, or with the teacher. You may ask yourself why you would want to flip your classroom. For today's 21st century learners, the traditional lecture or direct instruction style may tend to isolate or bore or disengage some of our students. So flipping the classroom allows us to teach our students in their preferred learning style in a digital platform. Flipping the classroom may change the role of the teacher. The primary role is no longer content delivery. The teacher has more time during class to provide effective, timely feedback, to work face-to-face with individuals or small groups, to provide more opportunities to differentiate, to clone yourself, and to provide just-in-time support and help, and also to avoid repetition of the same information. The role of the student may also change in the flipped classroom. The student is no longer a passive consumer of information. They become active learners. They're allowed to work at their own pace, and they have more peer interaction. There are several models for the flipped classroom. The model that we will use is called the in-class flip. So to compare this to the traditional classroom, let's look at the traditional classroom model. In that model, direct instruction occurs at home via video. Independent practice and extension occurs in the classroom with the teacher. It does not address digital inequities. That's why we would like to introduce the in-class flip. With the in-class flip, everything happens in the classroom. The digital inequity is addressed since the teacher can assure that all students have a device and have high-speed internet connection. In this video on the in-class flip presented by Jennifer Gonzalez of the Cult of Pedagogy, Jennifer explains how to set up different rotations for the activities in an in-class flip. If you're in a one-to-one classroom, you'll not need to focus on the stations that the students are rotating through, but more or less the different types of activities that are presented at each of these stations.
Hi, this is Jennifer Gonzalez for Cult of Pedagogy. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate a teaching configuration called the in-class flip. The pattern for a traditional flipped classroom goes like this. Instead of using lots of valuable class time delivering content to students, then having students apply that learning at home, you flip that arrangement, pre-recording the direct instruction and having students watch it at home, then doing the application part, what we typically think of as homework, in class. This arrangement is great when all your students have good home access to technology, but if they don't, the flip can fall apart. And access isn't the only problem. Some homes aren't conducive to the kind of learning that a traditional flip requires. Although districts are working on creative solutions to address these challenges, an in-class flip provides another alternative. Whereas a traditional flip depends heavily on things going right at home, the in-class flip keeps all parts of the flip at school, thus assuring that more students get the benefits of the flipped concept. Here's how it works. Suppose you teach Spanish. This week, you're ready to introduce the difference between the verbs ser and estar. So, just like in a regular flipped classroom, you record a short lecture on this concept. Now, instead of having students watch this video at home, the video becomes one station in your class. So suppose you have about 6 devices in your classroom for this kind of station. That takes care of one group of 6. If you have 30 students, we need good quality stations for the rest of them. Since this is a foreign language class, another station can be a memory game, using vocabulary that's already been learned, along with a few new words and a dictionary to look them up. That takes care of 6 more students. Notice that this is a game that can be played over and over. It's good to have a few stations like this, since others may require students to go longer than planned, and an infinite station like this one can absorb some of that extra time without students getting antsy. In another station, students could work in pairs, reading a skit that makes heavy use of the verbs ser and estar. For students who have already watched the video, this will reinforce what they learned. For those who have not, it'll act as an anticipatory set, building curiosity about those 2 words. Just like with the previous station, this activity can be done over and over if needed. Students can switch partners or roles if they get restless. Another station could be a standalone activity, like a cultural or craft lesson, like making cascarones. It's important that activities like this be quick and simple, taking no more time than any other station. Do one yourself ahead of time to estimate the duration. Another station could be a basket of clothes and household objects, along with a set of cards that give Spanish instructions for dressing up and acting out short scenarios. So where is the teacher all this time? This is what makes this a flip rather than just station work. Because the teacher has pre-recorded the lecture portion of the lesson, he is now free to interact with students at the other stations, correcting their misconceptions, answering any questions they might have, but never having to re-deliver the lesson itself. So right now, you'd have exactly the right number of stations for your students. But notice that none of these really builds on the learning that took place in the video station. And if you've ever done stations before, you know that it helps a lot to have at least one extra station to keep things from backing up. So let's add one more. This one will have focused written work that builds on the material learned in the viewing station. Notice that right now this is left empty. Because students need to watch the video before doing this station, it should be left empty in the first round. To help organize things, go ahead and number your stations. Notice that I made the empty station last and the video viewing station second to last. So get students started at their first station, and after a set amount of time, have them rotate to the next station. Once students start rotating here to station 6, this is where you'll spend most of your time to make sure the concepts from the video are being applied correctly. So the rotation would continue in this direction. As students move through the station, some irregularities may develop. One student will need to repeat the video, or a late arriving student will need to be worked into the rotation. Stations are ideal for this kind of differentiation as long as you plan for it. To keep things running smoothly, have a final independent activity like silent reading for students to do when they're completely finished with all stations. Or assign leadership roles for students who finish quickly, the dealer at the card game, the scenario reader at the dress-up station, or an assistant at the cascarone table. If you teach in a self-contained classroom or have extended class periods, an in-class flip could take place in one day, maybe taking about 90 minutes or so, depending on the kind and number of stations you set up. If you teach many groups in shorter periods of time, keep your stations set up over a few days or even a week, with the goal that students will finish them all by the end of a set period of time. I hope the in-class flip offers you a new option for using technology in your teaching. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.
So now that you have an idea of how the in-class flip works, let's talk about some best practices when you're flipping your classroom. When you're planning your lesson, things that you need to consider. First of all, always remember that the pedagogy comes first and the technology is second. Allow the lesson or the desired learner outcomes to determine what technology tools, if any, are necessary, as opposed to finding a lesson that will fit a digital tool. Consider what concept or content is best suited for flipping. This is usually DOK 1 level materials that you would present to the whole class. Also consider what the desired learner outcomes are, or your learning targets. What types of formative and summative assessments will you use to assess the learning that occurs in the videos? Would you prefer to record your own content videos or find those content videos that have already been created by others? Also consider interactive websites and podcasts for content attainment. The last thing you'll decide is what technology you'll use, what delivery platform is best suited for your class, and what websites and digital tools will meet the needs of your objectives. When planning your flipped classroom lessons, you need to consider what your activities will be while the students are viewing the videos. Will you be working with a small group at a table? Will you be facilitating and moving around the room? Will you be doing individual conferences with students? Differentiated activities or stations should be based on data, allow students to remediate or accelerate based on their needs, or allow review of previous material. When flipping your classroom, it's important to allow students to learn from peers and try to select simple, accessible, and familiar technology to support your flipped lesson. Here are some tips for a successful flip. Before the day of the flip, ensure that all websites and links are working on student devices. Remember, student Chromebooks have different permissions and capabilities than our teacher laptops and desktop PCs. So just because a website works on your teacher computer doesn't mean that it'll be available on the student Chromebook. In advance, inform your students that they'll need to bring their own earbuds or headphones, or arrange to check out headphones from your media center if they're available. Remember to start small and start slow. Start with content that you're comfortable with. Consider which class to start with based on the size, the ability, and the behavior of the class. Have the students turn their desks so you can easily see their computer screens from your position in the classroom. After you flip the classroom, ask students for feedback on how you can improve the process. This concludes our introduction to Flipped Classroom. For homework, I would like for you to join our Google Plus community called SCSS Flipped Classroom. I'll walk you through those steps in just a second. You may need to use the Training for Google Apps extension to learn more about how to use Google Plus. Also, I'd like for you to consider finding and saving non-YouTube videos for your content area. Please remember that YouTube videos are blocked on student devices. As you're finding these non-YouTube videos, you may want to bookmark or create a Google Doc or possibly a Symbaloo in order to collect all of the links that you'll find. To find the Google Plus app, open a new tab in your Chrome web browser. Make sure that you're logged into your Google Drive and click the waffle to look for your Google Plus app. If you do not see it in your waffle, you can always navigate to plus.google.com and it'll take you into your Google Plus community. Once you've opened Google Plus, in the search window, search SCSS Flipped Classroom, and you'll see the community populate here. On the right-hand side, you'll see an option to join that community. Mine says moderate, but yours will say join. And inside your Google Plus, if you need any assistance on how to use Google Plus, click the G Suite Training extension on the top right for step-by-step instructions on how to use the Google Plus community. In our February session, we're going to begin recording videos using a screencasting tool called Screencast-O-Matic. The face-to-face session will occur at the elementary school on February the 8th at 3 o'clock in room 403. The middle school session will occur on the 9th at 3:15 in room 414. And the high school face-to-face session will occur on the 23rd at 3:30 in room 408. If you prefer the online session, it will be recorded and published by the end of February. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to recording some videos in our next session.